to jump in and ask a question, then feel free. If you use the raise your hand, using the in Teams, if you're familiar with that, we can do that. And yeah, I'll hand over to Angela, who's project manager, and Sue, who's supporting on a lot of the very vital legal work. But we can both tell you a little bit more about that. So I'll hand over to Angela.
Well, my first test is to see if I can share my screen. So let's keep our fingers crossed for modern technology. Hopefully everybody can see my slides now and not my notes.
I can see them.
Excellent. Well, it's a great pleasure to come and talk today about the Coast to Coast project. It's been a fantastic project to work on and a fantastic team to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through where we are up to date, talk about a little bit of learning. Sue's going to overview some of the legal works, and then I'm just going to give you a flavour of the works that we have left to do, and perhaps look to the future of the National Trail within the Yorkshire Dales National Park. So as I said, it's very informal. Stop me if you've got any questions. I'm not overly good at seeing the hand being raised when I'm presenting, so do shout up. And yeah, hopefully you'll find it interesting.
I'll look for any hands going up. Angela.
Oh, thank you, Elliot. That takes the pressure off me.
All right.
So on to the first slide. So that's a team. Now we've all discussed that is a terrible team photograph. It's the only team photograph we've got. It was on one of our very first site visits up above Gunnerside. And we could be stood anywhere. It looks like an industrial wasteland, which it is. So I'm Angela, I'm the project manager, and Sue is the one with the black woolly hat on, slightly unrecognisable in that photograph, and she's our senior rights of way officer. And then Susanna is our support officer. So Susanna helps both on the legal side and with the project kind of administration with me as well. So that's the core team, but I do want to stress here that the team that delivers this project really goes a lot wider than that. It goes into the Rangers team, the legal team, ecology teams, and I think this project has actually probably been through most departments for asking of support, and without that broad support we wouldn't be able to deliver it, particularly the Rangers team. So I did a presentation recently to the LAF forum, and Neil, if you were there, you might remember that I was quizzed about some vital statistics and couldn't answer those questions, so I went away and did my homework for this presentation. So its contribution to the local economy along the route, it's been estimated about 7 million per annum, which is obviously you know, quite substantial. 6,000 people complete the path from end to end, and a quarter of these are international visitors. And when we're out on the path doing site visits, that's really evident. I mean, actually, I would say I've probably spoken to more international visitors than visitors that are walking the coast to coast that have come from the UK. And that doesn't take into account all those visitors that might do a circular route that takes in part of the coast to coast. So approximately 50% of the whole route has no underlying public right of way, and this is the whole route, not just the route that goes through our section that I'm responsible for delivering on. Now this was something I didn't realise about it. In 2004, it was voted the best second long distance trail in the world. We were pipped by New Zealand, which I have to say, having had friends that have walked the Milford track, I'll let them have that. And it normally takes about 2 weeks to walk, but the ultra runner Damien Hill, he completed it in 39 hours and 18 minutes. And I'm going to see if Matt, our own ultramarathon runner, wants to take that on as a challenge. He might want to. So just thinking back from where the start of the project started, so Natural England put forward the adoption of the Coast to Coast into the National Trail, and that was adopted, and then from that they have been working with the authorities, so the 6 local authorities across the whole route, to undertake the implementation works. And that's where we are. So the map up there, that's the original historic map that Alfred Wainwright drew in his book before the Yorkshire Dales National Park extension. But if we think about our route, so we have a route, it drops in from Oddendale, it goes across Crosby Ravensworth Fell, past Robin Hood's grave, which when we were on a site meeting, we tried to find and we couldn't. And then I've done research and it was a cairn. We were actually stood next to it. But anyway, we've lived and learned. Below Orton Scar, past the Severals, across Smardale Fell, then across into Westmoreland and Furness, just above Kirby Stephen. So it kind of drops out of our area, goes through Kirby Stephen, drops up past the 9 standards, and then comes back into our area across White Mossy Hill, crossing to Ney Gill, under Catterby Scar to Keld, and then just below Crackpot Hall, the route actually splits into 2 routes, and we're the only authority area that has this split in the route. So it kind of extends our length that we're responsible for. We've got a higher route and a lower route. So the lower route tracks down the River Swale to Reeth, pretty much following the river riverside, and then the higher route it tracks them over the fell to Laithwaite Me, across Gunnerside Gill, it goes up Bunton Hush to Riddings and then drops into Reeth, and Reeth is where the 2 routes join again. We've got 81.8 kilometres within the Yorkshire Dales National Park boundary. The higher route is 15.8 kilometres. The lower route is 17.6 kilometres. And I did a bit of calculation this morning. Don't quote me on these figures because it was a bit ad hoc. But that, I think it equates that we've got about 34% of the route within our boundaries. So we do have a significant proportion to deliver on. So the legal work, I'm going to hand over to Sue now for her to kind of just talk briefly where we are with the legal work and what's happening. So Sue, over to you. Sue, you're on mute, Sue.
Sue, I know you've unmuted it, Sue, but we for some reason we can't hear you.
Sue, do you want to dial in and dial back out again? And we'll come back to the legal works.
Yeah, maybe give that a try.
Right. Well, I'll come back when Sue dials back in. I'll just go to the slide in front, next one. So we'll come back to legal works, but obviously another major part of this delivery is the infrastructure. And we've been working with the Rangers to deliver the infrastructure. It's got a huge, I think we've got pretty much every type of work that the Rangers service will undertake on our route, from surface improvements to stiles to gates to you name it, we've got it. And since coming in post in November, I've sat down with the Ranger team, we reviewed the works along our route to see if they're still current from the original Natural England walkthrough. And we've now reviewed all that on our QGS systems, which is a really great way of monitoring, and I'll talk a little bit about that further on. And then on site, the signage, that's our first sign being installed there. That's Benedict. He's an apprentice installing the first sign in October 2024. I was very excited. It seemed a long time coming, but there it was. It's up. It's just out. It's just near Mask and heading out towards Richmond. And then this was me, just to say that I do some proper work. The Rangers got me. I went down and actually visited the workshop to find out about, spent a day with them just understanding how the signs are manufactured. And I have to say it was a really good few hours understanding the intricacies of how signs are ordered, the amount of effort that goes into the manufacture. Each one has to be designed and specifically ordered for that location, and it's just really helped me kind of plan the timings and what resources we might need. But I was immediately sacked after that work. It didn't come up to scratch, so I wasn't allowed anywhere near any further ones. I'm going to go back to the previous slide now, because Sue is hopefully. Can we hear you,
Can
Sue?
you, can you
Oh
hear me
yes,
now?
we can.
You can.
We
Yeah,
can.
apologies for that. I've been keeping myself muted because I have got a cough, and I'm trying not to inflict that on you. Right, okay, to go back to the legal work, let me just pick up a point that Angela gave you a few minutes ago, and that was that 15% of the coast to coast trail follows no underlying public right of way. So the work that I'm responsible for is to work on that, to establish the missing links between the existing public rights of way for the trail. So those missing links, we're addressing those in a number of ways. By and large, we're trying to create new paths on the designated trail where that makes sense. In a couple of cases, we have found that the designated route may not be the ideal, in which case we're looking at alternative solutions for those. But by and large, we're processing creation agreements, in one case, a creation order, because we have got no known landowner in that case, and a number of diversion orders. So those are effectively the mechanisms that we're using to try and put these missing links or fill those missing links with public rights of way. Just to update you on where we are with some of those, and the latest is slightly different from our slide here. We have actually completed two diversions. Two diversion orders have been confirmed and are now ticked off the list. Two more are due to be confirmed, hopefully fingers crossed by the end of this week. We've got one order, a diversion, which is due to be advertised and again will start its process. That's one at Lowneth Me in Gunnerside Gill. We've then got two diversions where the exact position of where we intend the new right-of-way to be, they are under discussion for a couple of reasons, and I'll come back to those at a later stage in the presentation. Those are at Bunton Hush in Gunnerside Gill and at Cringley Bottom, which is just to the east. And then over on the Western Dales side, we've got one diversion order that is currently out to consultation. Before we make an order, we go through the sensible process of consulting with our usual interested parties just to gauge opinion before we leap in with an order. So one over at Smardale, one near Smardale Old Railway Cottages, is out to consultation, as is our one creation order over at Tarn Moor, again just north of Orton. We've got a number of creation agreements, 8 in total. Three of those are in what we hope are the final stages. That's where we've agreed the terms with the agents acting on behalf of the landowners, and the documents are with the landowners' solicitors for finally signing off. Those have been with those solicitors since April, and we're still pushing to get them completed. So it's not a swift process, but we stick at it. Those 3 creation agreements, they are for Crosby Ravensworth Fell over in the Western Dales. They're for Riddings, which is just north of Reeth, and White Mossy Hill. White Mossy Hill at just near Nine Standards Rig. We've also got 3 others which are being processed at the moment, 3 other agreements, again, where we've got terms agreed through agents, and the documents are being passed to the landowner solicitor. There are 5 in total which are to the west of Kirby Stephen, and 3 of those 5 all need to be processed together because they effectively form one route that needs to be established at the same time. So those are all ongoing. Just one thing to tag on at this stage, and that is at the bottom of this slide. That's a comment about Section 38 of the Commons Act. Nobody really wants to get down into the nitty-gritty of the detail, but on White Mossy Hill, that's been something of a concern to us, because the requirements of Section 38 are that certain types of work need to get consent from the Secretary of State. And we were at first a little bit concerned that we may have had to have consent for this, but the more we looked into the detail, the more we satisfied ourselves that actually laying stone flags on a moorland surface within a common, in the context of the work that we're doing, does not need consent. It's nothing's ever black and white in legal terms, but we're fairly satisfied that we are proceeding without requesting consent under Section 38, and we've got we have reasoning which would help us to defend our position if that were ever challenged. But there seems to be consistency within all the authorities across the coast to coast that's the right approach to Section 38. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think I'll hand over to you. I think Derek has a question. Derek.
Yeah, I think Derek's coming.
Yeah, so sorry to pick up on a specific. I just wonder if you could give an indication of the attitude of the landowners and the agents that you're working with. I mean, it's great how much has been achieved and is in hand, but do we have particular difficulties where there's real obstruction to your work in play that might need other levers to be pulled?
That's a really interesting question, Derek. And I'm going to cross my fingers as I reply to you that by and large we have had cooperation, certainly within the Yorkshire Dales. I hear that other national parks have had sticking points, but those have been things which have been ongoing anyway. I think the thing with the coast to coast path is that the designation in 2022 didn't bring about anything particularly new, in the sense that Wainwright wrote his coast to coast walk in 1973, so people have actually been doing it, and the authorities along the way and the landowners have had to cope with it in all this time. I think what we're doing now is going back to do what should have been done in the first place, were this to be a completely new national trail. And I think we're finding that most landowners are resigned to the trail because they've been living with it for over 30 years, and so to be able to go in and negotiate terms with those landowners, which we did through an agent, I think there was a kind of a resignation that it was there. But yes, thank you very much. If we can agree some money to come through the scheme to put this all in place, then we'll take the money, please.
Thanks, Sue. That's very helpful and reassuring, and I think it's a testimony
I have
to
got
the
my fingers crossed.
nature of the relationships that you're developing as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is a good point. I mean, we've experienced on the delivery side, a lot of landowners have been very supportive, and I do think it's because it has been an existing route that hasn't been maybe managed as appropriately as it should have been, and they kind of see this as a way of supporting visitors not to go off the route. White Mossy Hill are seeing it as getting one linear route across, so there are real wins. And I like Sue, I am crossing my fingers because I know things can change quite quickly, but we have been really privileged. And I think one of the learnings that we have had as well is that we did employ a land agent ourselves, and she has been vital to getting these legal works through, because some cases it's not what you know, it's who you know, and she knows the right people to go to and can have conversations perhaps a little bit more frankly than we could, working directly as an employee of the local authority. And I think we all recognise the input that she's had to enabling these legal works to go forward.
Yeah.
Neil, did you want to come in with a question?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie, and thanks, Sue. It's just just carrying on from Derek's question. Is there any chance in other the protected landscapes of us ending up with gaps within within sort of creation orders and what have you, so there isn't a legal route, that's found, or is the fact that it's been used for so long up till now almost create a legal entitlement to use that route anyway?
Again, that's a really good question, Neil. Really good question, because I think coming from a rights of way background as I do, then yes, I'm kind of pre-programmed to ask the question, well, has it already been used for 20 years, in which case it's maybe become a right of way. But I think that's the approach of the coast to coast path team has been to kind of push that to the background and say, hey, we know that we want to work with the landowner to get this agreement in place, get the route acknowledged as a public right of way, and the easiest and most sustainable way of doing that is to work with the landowners to try and do it by agreement, rather than that rather more confrontational way, which is to kind of go in and say, well, we think it's already a right of way, you're not going to get anything out of it, we're just going to record it anyway. So I guess it depends on where you stand on whether you should be paying for something that the public may already have, or whether it's just an effective use of resources to do it this way, to make payments for creation agreements so that you get that route and probably get it quicker than 2 or 3 years of confrontation. I think on balance, this if we can get agreement, which again, fingers crossed, we seem to have, it's a better use of the resource, I think, to do it this way and not worry too much about whether it's already become a right of way. That's the bottom line if we had to use it.
It seems like the more pragmatic approach, but yeah, thanks, Sue. Sorry, Angela.
I think, no, it's all right. I think as well it's really important, because I've got all the time in the back of my mind, I've got timescales that I'm ticking down that we can access the infrastructure monies. And on some of the new legal rights of way, if we don't get them, we can't necessarily do some of the infrastructure works that we can get funding from. And I will talk a little bit more about funding later on, but that's something that's in, as a project manager, is in the back of my mind all the time, so I'm managing that risk. Right, I'll go on to the next. I'll just flick through those. So I just want to talk a little bit about this map. So this again is our route. Now, what this shows, the red line is the route. The black, all the little like sign, little marks on there are either finger posts or waymarker posts or field gates. They're all basically new infrastructure. So this is just the new infrastructure that's been installed by this project. And this is just talking about how we're managing it, because really this project is lots of little projects within a large project, and each little project needs to be managed. So we're working on this with the rangers. It took quite a long time for us to develop, because we wanted a system that they were used to using, and they do their monitoring of current infrastructure through QGIS. So this is how we're doing it. So everything black on there, there's some more that should be green, but the ones that are black haven't been installed yet. And then I'm very glad to see up in Crosby Ravensworth Fell, there are lots of green ones, which means that they are new finger posts that have been installed. So by the end of the project, as a project manager, I can see everything slowly going to green. Hopefully that's the plan, and know exactly what we've got installed as new infrastructure. Now, this isn't just a list of works that needs to be done, because we also have existing infrastructure on the ground, and we're doing works to existing infrastructure to either bring them up to standard, and all the existing finger posts that are in will need to be replaced with the Alfred Wainwright branded coast to coast finger posts. So this doesn't represent the whole infrastructure works that's on my list, but it does show kind of how we're managing it. Now, after discussing at the end of this, we've actually taken these out of the parish surveys this time, because we're just in a position where everything's changing. But we are going to undertake a survey in the autumn next year with the volunteers, so that we really get a line drawn about where we are with the infrastructure works, and we can hand over very accurate information back to Natural England at the end of the project. So I just wanted to pick that up. So I'm just going to give you a flavour of three things, three kind of elements of work that will be either ongoing for the rest of this year or going into next year, just so you've got a flavour of some of the larger works that we might be undertaking. So the first one is White Mossy Hill. I'm smiling because I think this has been my life for 9 months now, but it's getting there. So this is the route that drops in from our Westmoreland border across White Mossy Hill down to Ney Gill, and that's a diversion. No, it's a creation of a footpath there, and that's some of you may be familiar about the braided system that it was managed previously, but we're going to, because it's national trail, we can only have one route. So in recognition of the fact of the erosion, of bringing everybody back onto one route, we're doing quite significant surface works there. So we're going to be doing 2.9 kilometres of resurfacing works. I've been told this is the biggest infrastructure project I think that the Yorkshire Dales National Park's undertaken. So I didn't realise that before I took the contract, but anyway, we're there. And it's consisting of flags, boardwalks and pedestrian bridges. One pedestrian bridge, actually. We've managed to do flags over the rest of them, which is good. It's works and were hopeful to complete this year, but they're now scheduled for next year. We've got 850 linear meters currently installed and laid. All the boardwalk intersections are installed. And we've had a number of delivery challenges on this, and one of them, which I think the authority does need to think about when they're looking to undertake flagging works, is the supply of materials. So we appointed our initial contractor and they could not supply us with the materials as expected, and we had to terminate their contract in summer. And then I think I've turned myself into a stone flag dealer since then. So I've been ringing around trying to get materials. Stone flags are getting more expensive and in shorter supply, basically because the recycled flags, people have bought them, they've been removed from the mills. And I think what's going to be interesting about this is we are using mainly reclaimed flags. We've been lucky, but about 700 meters are going to be, now I'm going to have to just say this slowly because it's a bit of a tongue twister, what we're calling reclaimed, reflamed flags, which are the large stones that the machinery used to sit on, and our supplier is basically slicing them into the appropriate site, and then they're treating the top with double flamed to give them that natural cracked look. I think me and Michael went out to see these and we're both really excited to see them in situ because they're cut to regular sizes. They're going to be really easy to lay, but also to a very specified thickness. So when you're talking about airlifts, weights start to come into play. And we think for over wetland, these are going to be really, really interesting new materials that might become available to us. But I think because of the flags becoming in short supply, projects need to take that into consideration with their timescales. It may take longer to get materials than what it used to do in the past. So yeah, that was one of it. It's a F10 notifiable project under CDM. We've had a consultant in working with me and Matt. Matt and I hold the 3 responsibilities for CDM, and with that support of that consultant. And I think the lead up and planning into this project was really quite significant because of that. I mean, it's been brilliant. We've learned a lot of stuff and stuff that will go on and benefit other projects, which we will feed back into the authority's health and safety board. We've got and just the logistics of this project, because it is, well, we've got 2,000 linear meters of stone going down, and that equates into hundreds of pallets of flags, a significant amount of air flights, and just the planning. We have asked for very challenging specifications, I think, from our suppliers about size of flags, about weighing pallets, linear meters, and when we lost our first supplier, we did think very long and hard about whether we needed to reduce those specifications to able, but thankfully we didn't, and we have got the suppliers to agree to that. And I think I think that'll make it so much easier for our rangers when they're actually laying again next year. So looking to the future of this project, we're hoping to do the airlift starting in January, and works on the fell will commence in the next financial year. So this is a really exciting project for everybody. Just talking about Ney Gill, we've got a number of water crossings. New pedestrian bridges will be going in here. This will be works next year, and the pedestrian bridges, we're looking at about estimated cost of about £25,000 for those 4 bridges, and that doesn't include installation costs. But this is going to really improve that route there as well. Sue, do you want to just say a bit about just quickly about the discussions you've had with partners here?
Yes, of course. When we're dealing with a diversion, as we need to do here at Ney Gill, because the definitive line isn't the walk line, so we need to divert the path onto where we want people to walk. Where we're doing that, as I said earlier, before we make the diversion order, we consult with the people with an interest in rights of way, including the British Horse Society and the organisation Cycling UK. They're 2 of our consultees. So in the case of Ney Gill, we do our consultation. We're proposing to divert the path from where it's shown to where it actually is used, expecting no problems at all. And the 2 organisations come back and say, hang on a minute, we think that the definitive line is actually of a higher status than the footpath that is currently recorded on the definitive map, and therefore we think that you should be thinking very carefully about how you divert it. Now that could have made us a whole load of problems that would have taken us beyond the end of the project to try to solve. What we did was go off to research the claim that the 2 organisations were made, so that we were quite satisfied that actually they may have some evidence of higher status there, but we're not that sure that it would be enough to prove the case. And we sat down, we had a meeting with their representatives and talked it through, talked about the various different scenarios of and how our diversion could be slightly tweaked so as not to compromise their position if they want to pursue that in future. And we, by just sitting down and working with them, then I think we agreed that we could go ahead with this diversion. Their position wouldn't be compromised for the future if they do want to pursue a claim. But thankfully, and again I'm going to cross my fingers, because they've got until Friday to lodge an objection, but they haven't done so far. So that's just a little aside of working with the user organisations can actually help us to bring about the right result for all of us.
So moving on, I'm just going to quickly mention this one because I'm conscious of time. So this is Cringley Bottom. This is another area. So that's the existing route. It's the steps, as you can see, are very eroded. This is where we're going to be moving an existing bridleway and diverting it onto the walk line. The existing bridleway isn't in great condition, and the new walk line is also not great for bridleway access. Sue's had another meeting here with stakeholders on site to discuss what would be best. Is there a better line here that we could take it down? And the problem here is that the banks are not solid rock. It's very crumbly. It's actively eroding. We've got sections that are dropping away. So the next move here will be me meeting with a civil engineer, with the area ranger, Michael, in January to discuss if that line that's been put forward is suitable, if engineering works would be required. If they were, what would they be? And just looking at really at every single option to get a line down here that is suitable for the users that would be designated for. So finance, my favourite subject. So the spend, I've done it over all 3. So we're in our 2nd financial year now. So the spend was in the first year, so that was when I started, it was agreed a grant of 129,270, but we only spent 94,916, and that was expected due to delays in the project, which wasn't anybody's fault. It was just the way things worked out. Budget in 24-25, we had 796,000 pounds, £1,000 awarded, but I'm currently in negotiations with Natural England, and we have had it verbally said to us that they will be able to give us the uplift of 75,000, and that is to accommodate the increase in costs because of the loss of our flag supplier and then the ongoing delays with White Mossy Hill. So I'm about to put my first claim in, which I'm very excited about. So that's going to be 331,000 for the authority. And I think what's worth noting is £60,000, approximately £60,000 of that is what I classify as general staff time. So that's outside the Coast to Coast project team time. That's supporting rangers, both Claires on the legal side, and really claiming that time back into the authority. And then looking forward to 25-26, well, I'm doing the budgets at the moment with Alan. We've had a first run through, but I'm going to be originally the project was only running till October next year, but we have also had good indication. I've had conversations with Natural England, so has Alan, that we can extend the project to the end of next financial year, and I'll be applying on that basis. And we'll be looking, I think, potentially the same amount of funding coming in for that general kind of staff time, or a little bit more next year. I have expressed to Natural England that because of the delays we experienced in that first year that they're aware of, we've almost squashed delivery into the 2 final years. And I think one of the biggest risks to project delivery next year, and I've discussed this with Alan, is actually man hours to get things out and installed. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So next steps, complete phase 2 works on White Mossy Hill. And do the legal orders, complete the legal orders, or the legal works, complete all the practical works. The project will not go beyond the end of next financial year. So those infrastructure works that we need to get done next year. Just continue to review delivery and ensure learning's embedded into practices and other stakeholders that we're working with, and we have really good relationships both internally with other members of staff and externally with other delivery agents, and then continue to work with Natural England to really deliver those broader partnership programme. Oh, that wasn't the right button. That was the right button. And just thinking about 2026 and beyond, obviously we're in the infrastructure, so the implementation stage of the National Trail at the moment, but beyond that, the Natural England are considering, are wanting a National Trail partnership to be established, like the other ones, and they will be requiring a lead partner for that. That's a potential bidding opportunity for the park, and I know Alan is quite keen to position ourselves to bid for that. So we are taking a lead on a few other things across strategically that kind of would strengthen our opportunities for that, and I think that's really worth me and Sue considering as we go through this final year of how we can position the park in a good place to enable to bid for that and put a strong bid in. And then just a few reflections on the delivery so far, things that we've learnt. So I think one of the great things about the project is that it's moved away from a traditional kind of area. So the rangers are only working in their areas. You know, we've worked with pretty much every ranger from different areas on White Mossy Hill. We've had some brilliant input from Nathan, who's got a really strong experience working on machinery that's influenced how we're delivering it. You know, ranges of work next to each other on that project and shared skills and made new contacts and that kind of thing that hadn't established before. So I think that's really, really brilliant. I think one of the challenges for me as a project manager is the annual grant award system. This is a huge budget. I have to say, I've not worked on such a large scheme as this before where it's been an annual award. And it always feels a little bit like we're in arrears. Normally, for a fund that I've worked on that's this large in budget, it would be agreed over 3 years and you could kind of move the budget between years, but that's not how Natural England does it. I think everything takes longer and is more complex due to the landscape, from permissions, ecology, consent, but just to the physical getting everything there on site to install, and therefore it costs more money in people time, and just, you know, all that kind of prep work, planning, logistics. I think grant funding, and I think strategically, I know that the authority is thinking of moving towards project based, but it gives it gives opportunity for the authority to build staff skills and purchase new equipment that then can be left in authority post that project. And hopefully if I click on here now, so this is a good example. That's me and Michael with our new health and safety tents. It was £600-700. We're using it up on White Mossy Hill. We needed it for health and safety. Originally, when we were looking at a shelter, I think it was very much, we'll just get something that'll do White Mossy Hill. And I was like, no, let's get something that can be left in the authority afterwards. So that'll be left after the project for other members of staff, be that volunteering teams, you know, be that other rangers working out on the fell for a while, and they can use that as a temporary shelter. And I think it's always really when you're putting bids together, it's always really worth thinking about that. And also, we've accessed some money for training, and I'm going to be delivering in partnership with Rachel to the Rangers team meeting about access and how we can look at, this flows nicely into the next point, consistency of standards across delivery. And that's not talking about miles without style standards. That's talking about, you know, if we've got a style, how can we make that more accessible? Should we be putting a grab rail in? What are we doing? Are we doing the same thing across different areas? And then we can use that to influence our delivery over the next year. And I'm quite excited about that. I don't know if everybody else is, but I am. And then, you know, partnerships that we've developed through this project, you know, opens up new professional relationships built and established that may support the authority's delivery and objectives in the future. And I think as we move into that final 3 to 4 months, if I identify key relationships that I've developed through this project, I think it's really careful. It's really good that I manage how those contacts are handed on to somebody else in the authority, so those relationships aren't lost. That's mine. Have you got anything to add there, Sue? Or
I don't think so. I think Neil has a question.
I was going to say, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Angela, and yeah, great presentation. Thank you. It's just, the question was just about those last few slides and the use of, you know, the authority moving into a more project-based sort of you know, future, and going back to the finance side of things. Am I right in thinking that the authority, over and above what it has cost them, that 60,000 is kind of in effect a bit of profit and a contribution over and above what the overall costs of the overall project actually cost to deliver? So when we look at that as members, you know, you kind of think, well, moving to projects isn't necessarily a good thing and it's potentially dropping core funding. But in actual fact, we are at least getting some kind of income from the project itself. Or am I completely wrong on that?
No. Well, we don't use the word profit. We use the word surplus. Yeah, you're heading along. But it's quite interesting. So I'm just taking off my project manager hat and putting on my fundraisers hat here, which I've held previously. What we call is full cost recovery. So full cost recovery is really, really important. So I'm just talking about that general time that we claim is claimed at full cost recovery. The staff team's time is also covered at a full cost recovery rate. And what that basically means is that it covers the salary of those individuals plus overhead costs, national insurance and everything else. So the team, the coast to coast team, is contributing to those overhead costs as well as you just getting salary. Now, many years ago, what you would have done in a bid when I first started fundraising, we would just put in for the salaries. We wouldn't have put in for those overhead or that full cost recovery. However, there's been a massive shift in the fundraising sector over the past 10 years, and there's a real recognition now that funders cannot just fund basically a post, i.e. salaries and any direct cost to that post, that they also have to pay a contribution to the electricity, the contribution to the building that member of staff is sitting in, and all those other things. Now, the general staff time, it's the same basis, full cost recovery, and it funds those members of staff to come on and work on my project. So for audit purposes, everything that I claim, I can trace directly back to an access ranger or an area ranger undertaking tasks on my project. But again, it's charged at full cost recovery rate. So all the overheads that are also associated with that individual are being covered. So you can, as a budget holder, you can then see that percentage of those contributions of those overhead costs going into those central fixed costs. And in that way, I think full cost recovery is really great, because you would have those fixed costs to cover anyway within your budget. You know, you have to pay for Yoredale, you have to pay for the electricity, regardless of how many staff are sat in the building or not, they're fixed. So I think projects are a great way via full cost recovery to bring in that additional bit of extra income to support those core costs that wouldn't change whether you did or didn't have you know, a project being delivered. Is that does that make any sense? Is that
Yeah,
making
no,
sense?
that's a great answer, and you know, that gives us a bit of confidence going forward in terms of looking at projects. As long as it's done on the basis that you've just described, then we can be comfortable that's not a bad way to progress, or in as bad a way to progress as we potentially have thought that it was. But I'll just remember to use the word surplus in the future.
Yeah, surplus. I keep doing that. Other people can say it's surplus. But I think and actually is in the funder's eyes, it's not even surplus. These are costs, you know, so they are auditable through, you know, Michelle does the calculations and she'll know exactly why she's put those percentages. They are real costs that occurred by a project. Yeah. And I think that's why I really flagged up there about the importance of, when you're bidding for money, is to really consider, you know, times are tight. I've worked in many charities raising money. You know, things about what other bits can we bring, you know, like that tent. I know it's not a huge amount of money. It was £600-700. That's not a huge amount on the budget, but that is a really great piece of equipment that supports the delivery of our staff and makes our staff's lives a lot easier post this project. And that's also another way of thinking about the sustainability of project funding. You know, is new IT equipment required? You know, always put that in, you know, because then it allows that, and that's left in the authority post. If you can't, I mean, it depends on the funder, it's all different bidding, but if you start to think about sustainability, full cost recovery, and then those bits and training, you know, like we've got that 3,000, I've got £3,000 from Natural England for doing that training session. That's a great opportunity to fund something that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to purchase in ourselves. And I think that's a real strategic opportunity with project funding. There are issues with it, but you know, I think in the reality is, in the financial markets across fundraising sector at the moment, we're facing a new reality.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's sort of good to know all that background information. So as I say, we can be more confident going forward with project-based stuff. Thank you.
So, Mark, I think you've patiently waited to ask another question.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, just in terms of the route itself, is it exclusively a walking route? You mentioned cycling organisation. Is this a shared route? And then the other question was on the funding. Have we got any smart ideas for squeezing some donations out of our 6,000 a year walkers that use it? So are we putting up some signage where people can use their phone and give us a few quid to look after this fine path? Thank you.
The route along is being termed, so the whole coast to coast is being termed as a path. So it's the coast to coast path. And it will only be pedestrians that can access it from one end to another end. Within our boundaries on our routes, we made a commitment to go for the highest access that we could get on that route. And that's why when we can get a bridleway, we're hoping to get a bridleway. If we're diverting a bridleway, we want to keep that bridleway. We don't want to divert it back down to footpath, or or change the status of that footpath. And I think honestly, we've got really good relations with a lot of the stakeholder groups, and I think they really appreciate that that's what we've been trying to do. And that's really an acknowledgement of the fact that this route contributes to a lot of circular routes. We've got an opportunity to improve bridleway routes that may not run along the coast-to-coast path, but a section of it runs along the coast-to-coast path. And although we are delivering the coast-to-coast path, we have a responsibility to those accessing our area of responsibility to make sure we can get that higher access. So yeah, the whole route is been very much pitched as a path that's pedestrian, but within our area we're trying to seek the highest status possible and maintain the status of the routes that are already in existence. Funding was the next one, wasn't it? Sorry, you'll have to remind me.
So are we looking to get donations from our walkers, as we do on the Three Peaks, for example?
Well, this is an interesting point. I think there's been thought about it internally, but it's not moved that far. I know Alan has had a donation for a sign, but it's not been formalised. And I think that's something that needs to be strategically considered across the authority. With regard,
I can come in on that, Angela. Mark, you're aware. Obviously, we had a discussion within the audit and review, the review of the statutory rights away, and looking at that possibility of getting some, to broadly call it donate a gate type of scheme. And that's something that actually just discussing. I was discussing with Michael Devlin from Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust about how we do that. He was interested from the perspective of the Pennine Way having its 60th anniversary, and perhaps using that as a means to generating some donations towards that. But similarly, we could consider the same thing for the coast to coast in the fullness of time. Obviously, we hope, given that it's had this investment over, that it will be in good shape certainly across the Yorkshire Dales part of it for a little while. But it's certainly something we can think about for the future, alongside all the other. Obviously, there's the Three Peaks donation scheme as well. So yeah, that's certainly something to think about in future.
I think as well, it has been picked up that the National Trail Partnership, when it's established, will also consider opportunities for bringing income for the National Trail to support the ongoing works. So it's been thought about at that level as well.
Thank you.
Derek, I think you've got your hand up.
Thank you. I mean, this is one of the most exciting project briefings I think we've had for a long time. And so, I mean, I thank you for the work that's going on, and I thank you very much for the focus of the presentation. Brilliant. Remaining question that we haven't touched on is the learning capacity and the interrelationship with other national parks where the route goes through. And I wonder if you've got anything to say on that in our closing minutes, because I'd be quite interested in how elsewhere they're doing work which can learn from us, and we are learning from others.
Yeah, so I'll answer this first, and then I'll hand over to Sue, because she's been doing some really interesting work on the legal side with other officers. So we obviously meet the technical group meeting, and we hosted the last one in September and did a site visit out to White Mossy Hill. So that's kind of the formal route. I have got quite a lot of informal connections with the project managers, particularly in Westmoreland and the Lakes. And so we're often in contact, just picking each other's brains, as you do informally. I think it's something that the officers and we have raised with Natural England, that we would like to do more of that, particularly at the end, to gather that information and learning together. And I think the early concept of the coast to coast was that would happen, so it could feed into future national trail or developments or policy framework. So I'm just going to pass you on to Sue, because she's been doing something really interesting, and she can probably give you a bit more of an idea about where we're going to be heading with this.
If I can unmute myself again. Yeah, next week I'm due to host the first of what I hope will be several collaborative meetings with my equivalent in the other authorities, the 6 authorities which cover the coast to coast, east to west. These are the people who are like me doing some of the legal work. And so getting minds together is aimed at 2 things. One is just helping solve each other's problems technically, because although again, fingers crossed, our casework seems to be going quite smoothly. In other in both the Lakes and the North York Moors, they've both got a couple of real sticking points where they need some solution. So getting heads together is one part of this, but also what we are doing is aiming to draw out of this a lot of learning points, not just technical legal stuff for the public path order work, but learning points for the next national trail, things that could have been done better, things that we could improve on, and general learning points for our respective authorities out of this. So it's very much something that's in all our minds once we can just stand back from the pressure of getting the day-to-day stuff done. But absolutely, Derek, it's a very important part of the whole project.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, it seems possibly the questions have dried up now, which is good because we're just a couple of minutes away from 1:30, when we're going to draw things to a close. So I think as long as there's no more questions, it's just for me to say thank you very much to Angela and Sue for their efforts and presenting that information today, which is fantastic. I had the pleasure of going out with them in the summertime, and it was very nice to look at some of the work, and I've also been out again as work has been going on with White Mossy Hill. So exciting stuff, as Derek says, and more exciting stuff to come. So I think, unless there's anything else to say, that's it for this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.